Hey everybody, my name's Mike Montgomery, and today I'm excited to show you how to build this DIY all-plywood floating media console on Modern Builds. I'm building this project out of 3/4 inch oak plywood. I think it's gonna have an awesome look. I'm starting by breaking this piece down with my circular saw before cutting it into strips, and that's what we'll be making our doors out of. Here, I'm cutting these pieces into 3/4 and 1.5 inch strips by using this spacer on my table saw fence. And now I can remove this spacer, and instead of getting a perfectly square 3/4 inch piece, I now get an 1.5 inch one. Check it out. The idea is simple, but it works. And then, by putting my spacer back in, I'm able to get another 3/4 inch piece. And what's cool about doing this alternating cut is I'm gonna maintain my grain pattern across the whole door and drawer face. And doing this project made me realize I need to build an outfeed table for this saw soon. And now when I lay these out, not only should the grain flow from piece to piece, but then when I flip my wider pieces on edge, the grain should flow from the thinner piece to the wider piece when you look top down. We knew we were on the right path, so my buddy Shane and I continued cutting these strips out for the door blank. And now finally, our last cut. Whew, that was a lot of cuts, but we are done. Moving on. And now we've jumped ahead. I've quickly constructed this little jig for the assembly of the door slab that we need to create. I just screwed a 2x2 along the straight edge of a piece of plywood, along with a second piece set at 90 degrees so that we can actually make a square corner. And so what I'll do is I'll take each 1.5 inch piece and flip it on the edge and push it into the corner. And then the 3/4 inch piece will slide right up against it. And then we repeat that process. We flip that on edge, push it up, and then take our 3/4 and do the same. But of course, we'll be using wood glue and 1.25 inch brad nails to attach everything. The main objective here is to avoid glue squeeze out. And now we'll flip that glued piece in and smush it into the corner. And fun fact, brad nails will deflect to the left and to the right of your nailer easiest. So that's why I'm just gonna use this gun upside down. It also helps me get a pretty level shot. Each of these little strips had a little bit of tension, and that's why it's important that I had some kind of jig to make sure everything was square and flat on the back. It's definitely possible to make this kind of glue up just with clamps and glue, but I think you would get a lot of squeeze out that would be no fun to clean up, and I do think it would be tough to get all of those small pieces as flat and even as we were able to. For me, it was easy just to focus on one strip at a time instead of all of them at once. And we are done. And we've only got this one misfire. I don't know if the angle grinder is the best solution, but it worked. And we now have one big slab we're gonna cut 3 doors out of. Every time I did a cross cut, I made sure that I used painter's tape to get a good quality finish cut. Oak especially has pretty long fibery grain and is susceptible to tear out. And now we're all squared up. How did we not hit any nails? I was so sure we were gonna hit at least one of those brad nails. But what really matters is how clean this side came out. And it is perfect. Before I cover up these plywood layers, I'm gonna sand across all of this edge grain with 150 grit sandpaper on the Random Orbit sander. Each of our doors are gonna be 18 inches wide, so I'm gonna cut them out of the slab now. The 1/8 inch kerf of the blade is also going to be the spacing between the doors, so they're able to open. How do I keep not hitting nails? I'm so lucky. I am. Holy cow. In this shot, you see me locking down our slab. That way it can't move while we apply edge banding. And now that's locked in and ready for edge banding. I ordered this 250 foot roll of iron-on edge banding from Amazon for 40 bucks. It's a great deal when you buy this stuff in bulk. There's a heat-activated glue on the back of this veneer, and so it sticks onto the plywood really easy, especially with these super smooth cuts we got off the table saw. I just hope there's gonna be no issues when we're ironing close to the strips that we've already done. What I'm gonna do is make sure that the hot part of the iron is always going over the pieces we have not veneered yet. This worked great and prevented me from reheating the glue from the previous strips, but just so you know, if you ever need to move or shift some of the veneer you've already put down, just place your iron where you want to adjust and then you can line everything up perfect. Now some of y'all might be thinking, wow, that's a lot of edge banding. I mean, honestly, I've spent about an hour so far doing this, but I have saved an insane amount of money. When I went to Home Depot, I was planning on originally getting some 1x8 oak material to build this out of, but after pricing it out, it was gonna cost almost $650, $700. I'll do the math and put it up on the screen. Home Depot hardwood is always expensive, but wow, that was some sticker shock. Instead, I spent about $250 on the plywood and another $50 on this roll of veneer, basically cutting the price of this project into a third. And for an hour or so of edge banding, I would say, worth it. The reason I cut these doors out of the slab before applying edge banding is so that this edge banding would extend past the end. That way the veneer I applied to the end can butt up to it. And this is just going to be a lot of these little strips. I wanted to maintain an authentic solid wood look to the ends of these doors, and that's why I have this simulated end grain going horizontal. It just took a little extra time, but I do think it's a lot more convincing than if the grain was going vertical, like wrapping around the cabinet. Trimming all of this veneer took another hour, hour and a half, so basically the plywood versus solid wood time comparison was probably an addition of 2.5, 3 hours. And next, we're going to be building the cabinet box. But first, I am going to give a big thanks to the sponsor of today's episode, Squarespace. If you need a website or an online store, it has never been easier. Squarespace is introducing Design Intelligence, essentially combining their multiple decades of website design expertise with the most cutting-edge AI. Basically, you can just tell Squarespace by typing out the website you're trying to create and telling them a little bit about your brand or business. And then you get a custom-tailored website that's already really close to what you're probably looking for, and then editing from there is super easy. And if you're somebody doing business online taking payments, Squarespace Payments is the best place to do that, all in one spot. Onboarding new customers is super quick and easy so that you can get paid quickly, and customers get flexible, convenient payment options. And last but not least, with Squarespace online courses, you can turn your knowledge and expertise into income. Squarespace has got all the tools to build your online course from scratch. And then from there, you can set your paywall, whether that's a one-time fee or a recurring subscription charge. So to learn more, make sure and follow my link down in the description. That's squarespace.com/modernbuilds. And when it's time to make your site live, don't forget to use my code ModernBuilds for 10% off your first site, store, or domain through Squarespace. As always, big thanks to Squarespace and you all for watching. Let's finish up this media console. A second sheet of plywood is all we needed for the rest of this project, and my first cuts were to break down the pieces that we're going to make our top, bottom, and the two sides out of. The total width of our cabinet is about 6 feet wide, and when everything's assembled, it comes out to a total of 18 3/4 inch tall. Instead of doing the most basic glue and screw assembly here, I'm going to at least recess my screw heads. That way I can backfill that void with an oak dowel. Before that though, I want to edge band all of these pieces, that way my ends are all flush and lined up, and then it was game time. Once again, I was really careful not to get very much glue squeezed out because it's really tough to clean up in the corners of plywood without damaging the face veneer. And if you were curious, these are 1.25 inch pocket hole screws. It was also the pocket hole drill bit I used to make these recesses, and they're 3/8 inch wide. Oh, and I could have mentioned this already, but if you're interested in any of the tools, materials, or supplies that I'm using, I'll leave those linked in the description down below. What is this? West Elm or something? I'm genuinely impressed. This is looking like solid wood. These spacers are gonna go on the back of our middle dividers. That way the front edge can be flush. Having this space behind the middle dividers is also going to allow wires and plugs to feed to the outlet and through the console. And the idea is you want the middle of this board to split the gap between each door. The reason I use that pocket hole drill bit is because it's got the stop on it so that I can make sure that I've got just enough material for these 3/8 inch oak dowels to grab onto with glue, but it isn't too deep so that the screw doesn't have enough material to grab onto. And a flush trim saw is the way to go to trim these flush. Ba-doo. These look nice once they were sanded, but they're gonna look awesome with some simple finish. And now we're back. to our doors. We need to put hinges on them, that way we can attach them to the case. And right away, I realized I didn't have one of those hinge installation jigs that are really convenient. I'll leave one linked below, but if that's the case, just make sure you've got an 1 3/8 Forstner bit. That's the same as 35mm, which is the majority of these hinges. And the nice thing about this style hinge is the amount of adjustability that you have, which really came in clutch with this project, since I didn't have one of those precision installed jigs. If you wanted, you could make this middle section a drawer, an open section, but I think I want to do a pull down drawer with shelving for basic storage and devices. To create that motion, I installed the hinges on the bottom of the doors and the cabinet. And in this video, you only see me using 2 hinges, but I'm gonna go back and install 2 more for a total of 4, since this is a pretty heavy door. And to help it stay closed, I added this little grabber thing on the top of the door that mounts to the inside of it, as well as on the top of the inside of the cabinet. Basically, when it's closed, it latches just a little bit. The grabber worked, and our reveal looks amazing. Continuous grain on a lot more continuous grain. To make this oak sing, I am going to be applying a coat of Maker brand Simple Finish. This is really easy to do. You just want to flood the surface of your wood and allow it to soak for about 10 minutes. This looks so good. And then after 10 minutes, spread that out one more time and then wipe off all the excess so that it doesn't puddle and dry on the surface. And to hang this console on the living room wall, I'm using what's called a French cleat. I cut this on my table saw, I set the blade to 45 degrees, and then ripped a piece of 3/4 inch plywood in half. One of these 2 interlocking pieces are gonna connect to the cabinet with a few screws, and that'll allow everything to hang from the cleat we'll install on the wall. I used my stud finder and marked all the 2x4 studs behind the drywall before installation, that way I knew this would be sturdy. This cabinet's heavy, so you want it to be in at least 3 2x4 studs. We've got the cabinet in place, but we're not done yet. We still need to install the shelves on the inside. And to do that, I just drilled the holes for these little shelf pins and put them in place. And now we are done. Overall, I am very, very happy with this media console. The oak plywood is absolutely beautiful, and I like this little detail with the dowels connecting our panels together. And instead of just doing 3 evenly spaced ones, I tried to do a little bit of a pattern. It's about 6 feet wide, and this wall is about 12 feet wide, so the whole ratio seems really good. There's a ton of storage, and the soft close hinges really are nice. And FYI, the finished height of the top of our cabinet is basically 22 inches. I've got 4-inch wide baseboard, so I wanted the bottom of the cabinet to be 4 inches above that. And I think it looks great. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Make sure and like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell. The full DIY living room renovation episode is coming out very soon. I'll leave a link on the screen when it's live and down below. So until then, I appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see you next time on Modern Builds.